F1 24 Season 1, round number 13 of my driver career mode, the United States Grand Prix. I was about to say the Texas Grand Prix, which is what the game calls it, but it's really called the US Grand Prix, United States Grand Prix. Yep, first race in the USA for this season. We didn't go to Miami, of course. We are going to Las Vegas towards the end of the season. I mean, it's only like 3 or 4 rounds away now at the end of the season, but yep, we're going to adapt a few parts going into this weekend because obviously we've had the regulation change for next season come up, so going to adapt a few parts to make sure Aston Martin aren't going to be way behind next season. Gonna put on a new energy store for this race weekend because our second one and final one is pretty much done for, so we're gonna have to take a penalty at some point. However, I will say there was a glitch where it didn't actually award the penalty for me, so nothing I can do about it. I didn't do it on purpose. It seems like that glitch, which has been in pretty much every other previous F1 game lit recently, is still there. So yeah, I've got to take note of that in the future because I think it's a little bit unfair. R&D there, McLaren's still up at the front. We're now in second ahead of Red Bull and Ferrari, so hopefully some good pace for this weekend. This is of course a sprint qualifying weekend, so we've got a sprint race and the main Grand Prix to do, so double the action here in Texas. And here we are in SQ1, first qualifying session. We are P2 at the end of that one, so showing some good time right up there with Fernando as well. Both Saupers, Sargent, Ocon and Ricciardo out in SQ1, so yeah, interesting to see Ricciardo out there. In the Alpines, one week seemed to be really good, the next week then kind of nowhere, so you know, a little bit all over the place for them, as it kind of is in real life to be honest at the moment. SQ2, and of course we're still on the medium compound tyres for Sprint Quali 1 and 2, then it's the soft tyres for Sprint Quali 3, with soft tyres throughout all of the main qualifying. But as we come down this long straight here, of course, good time in SQ2. Can I get a good time here in SQ1? Can I get a good time in SQ2? Yes, I can. Once again, P2. And once again, within a tenth of Piastri at the top. So he's looking very quick. The big surprise here, Max Verstappen out of SQ2, ended at a 2-minute 0.6. There was no, rain. There was no rain or anything in that session. So Verstappen just did not get a lap time on the board. So crazy for him, the championship leader out, but it is only sprint qualifying. So, at least that's happened for him here and not in the main Grand Prix qualifying. Alexander Albon was the kind of beneficiary of Verstappen going out there. He's made it into the top 10. As you can see at the moment in the top left, he's actually ahead of Lewis Hamilton, although I think that may perhaps change, or maybe not, as we cross the line. We're going to go P1. We go quickest in sprint quali, and Albon does go ahead of Lewis Hamilton, so what a result for him in this sprint quali session. It is of course only the top 8 in the sprint race that score points though, but we are on pole position for this race, for this sprint race, and we'll see what we can do here in the USA.
Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting sprint. Shaw lines up on pole position, and Lando Norris lines up alongside. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Sainz, Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, Fernando Alonso, Perez, Russell, Albon, Hamilton, Gasly, Tsunoda, Hulkenberg, Magnussen, Verstappen, Ricciardo, Ocon, Bottas, Joe, and Logan Sargent. And with preparations almost complete, let's head trackside for today's sprint.
Here we go for the sprint then. Like I said, we did get pole position. We were looking quick the whole time, but I will be honest, the other drivers around us just didn't quite put the performance in SQ3, so maybe got a little bit lucky. We get off the line here, and we're going to straight away cut to the left to defend into turn 1. Somebody there looking around the outside, but we're going to cover it off, and we're going to stay in the lead of this race. So the second time we've started from P1. Of course, last time it was pole position in Monaco. We unfortunately lost P1 into turn 1 to Carlos Sainz, and it was actually Carlos Sainz who got a great launch, who had a go at us into turn 1 here, but this time around we managed to keep that first position, so we are still in the lead of this United States Grand Prix sprint race. Pace is looking good, the 2 McLarens looking quick, the 2 Ferraris looking pretty quick as well. Of course, Verstappen did not have a good quali, and Perez is further down the order as well. So This could be good points for myself. Albon, as you can see there, already made it up to P7, so he's had a very good start here after starting P9 on the grid. As we then head down this next corner, just trying to manage this race at the moment, stay out in front, and yeah, did not know what our race pace would be like, did not know, you know, how difficult the ERS would be. At the moment though, after this first lap's pretty much almost done, managed to manage the ERS pretty well. I've been surprised in the last couple of races. You know, Monza, Italy, we were a lot better on ERS than I thought we were going to be on a track like that. And here, after one lap, you know, we're only down to 62%, so that's not too bad, to be honest. And I've been using it a fair amount to keep the cars behind. So we cross the line, we lead the first lap here in the sprint race. We'll have to see how much longer that lasts, though. As on to lap number 2, Hamilton, of course, got overtaken, or actually, I think it was Russell who had a bad start. He's already down to P10. Hamilton did start behind Albon, and on lap 2, he's already trying to make his way back past the Williams driver, and he does get back past up into 7th position for Lewis Hamilton. Lap number 3, we've managed to keep the cars behind for a couple of laps now, but with DRS and not quite the ERS power to fight back at this point in time, Carlos Sainz is going to get past us into this braking zone, and he will now lead this sprint race. Sergio Perez, the highest placed Red Bull, of course, at this point in time, is going to try and make moves as well as he tries to get past Albon, just like Hamilton did. This time, though, it's going to be for the final point in this sprint race. Perez would love to get at least a point for himself and Red Bull here when his teammate's down in P14 at the moment. He's only made one position up off the start, and Perez does manage to get past Alexander Albon and up into 8th place. With the DRS, we're now having a look back on Sainz again. Purple through sector 1. He goes a little bit defensive through here. We're going to dive up the inside though, but we're not quite close enough. A little bit of wheel banging there, but we have to back out of it. Unfortunately, cannot get past Carlos at that point in time, but I believe it is the next lap around. We're now closer behind him as we come to this DRS zone. He's already going defensive, and it's going to be a little bit of an easier move. We managed to get past him before we get to the corner, and we're now back up into the lead of this sprint race at the halfway point. So we're still looking pretty good at the moment, but the McLarens are looking pretty good too. Lando Norris currently in 3rd place. He's now going for a move on Carlos Sainz to the outside on the curbs for Lando Norris. Round the outside he goes. Carlos is going to put up a fight here, but unfortunately cannot quite do anything, and Lando Norris will get past. Sainz is starting to now fall down the order. I'm not sure if over the radio I heard that he perhaps has an issue. Typical for Sainz, he's really had a poor season with reliability, and Piastri now gets past him up into 3rd. So it is now a McLaren 2-3, as Sainz now has Alonso, the car behind him. And as they head into this next corner, Alonso sizing up a move on the Spaniard. Of course, Spaniard on Spaniard here, my teammate versus the Ferrari driver, and yellow flag. Sainz is going slow, and his engine is completely done. Smoke coming out the back, and that is another retirement for Carlos Sainz. I really need to tally up the DNFs at the end of this season. You know, in the background, I've got some stats that I think I'll share with you guys at the end of the season. But I really need to also start looking at DNS, because Sainz has had a lot of mechanical. That's I think at least his 3rd mechanical failure this season. So Sainz not having a good time of it. We were leading the race. Norris, though, with some supreme pace and, of course, with aid of DRS, gets past us, and now he will be the 3rd driver of this race to lead the sprint race. And he is going to lead it home, because I unfortunately cannot quite catch him in the last couple of laps. So it's going to be Lando Norris who's going to come through to win the sprint race in the USA. We are going to come home P2 though. Unfortunately, we couldn't quite convert the sprint pole position to a sprint win. But it's P2, it's one of our best races in quite a while, and driver of the day, Oscar Piastri, he did a pretty good job, I guess. I think came home in 3rd. Alonso came home in 4th, so it is a checkerboard of McLaren and Aston Martin there, and the Ferraris would have been there with us as well. Leclerc there in 5th, and Sainz would have been right up there too, but unfortunately, yeah, that mechanical failure set him back. Then it is Hamilton up to 6th, Perez 7th, and George Russell does manage to get back a single point for this sprint race. Unfortunately for Albon, he doesn't score, and Verstappen there in 10th, but no points for him, as 10th in a sprint race earns you no points. Into the main qualifying session now, and now we're on to soft tyres for the whole session. and I was pretty confident going into this one. You know, our pace, especially in quali, in the sprint, was pretty good. You know, I mean, very good. We qualified on pole. I did know that the other drivers definitely had more to give because they weren't, you know, in that SQ3, they definitely didn't push it. You know, Piastri was, you know, about half a tenth ahead of us the whole quali session, and I think he actually went slower in Q2 on the soft tires, in Q3, sorry, on the soft tires, than he did in Q2 on the medium tires. So, you know, it didn't really work out for everyone. And sure enough, end of Q1, the two McLarens are looking very quick again, but it's still ridiculously close. We're there in P9 actually. Not a great Q1 for us, although we do make it through relatively easily. Both Williams out in Q1 though, so that's a big shock for Albon, who was looking so good in the main, you know, in sprint qualifying, got into the top 10. He's out into Q1 here in the main qualifying session, along with his teammate and I believe both Saubers and a Haas of, I think, Hulkenberg. So, yeah, no real shocks there, but Albon perhaps a little bit of a shock based on the sprint quali performance. Q2, and once again, we're looking quicker here. That Q1 lap, like I said, was not the best lap, so I was really putting it. You can see I also take a different line around that corner. I found it better to take a tighter line there than do what the kind of racing line tells you to do. That's just personally my preference of, you know, how I think I run this track best. We ended up going quickest there, but in the end it's not quite quickest in Q2, but it is P5 right there with Fernando Alonso. Carlos Sainz leads a Ferrari 1-2 in Q2, so very good for him. This time Max Verstappen does manage to make it through to Q3, and it's pretty much the expected 5 teams, 10 drivers, you know, that you would expect in Q3. And now we go into Q3, and once again I'm thinking we can potentially go for pole here, although my time, because that time in Q2 was a much better time than my Q1 time. I was just ahead of Alonso by less than a tenth of a second. We were both within the, I think, like 32.9 second time range, but didn't quite have the pace of the McLarens and the Ferraris. So I went into this one not really sure if maybe we could fight for pole, but and I mean, if sprint quali had anything to go for, we should definitely be able to fight for pole, but it seemed to be a little bit more difficult in this main quali session. The other drivers tended to, you know, really step up for this quali session, so wasn't quite sure what I could do. We went green through the first sector, and then as we go into the second sector, well, we finish the second sector, that's a green as well, but still don't think any purples this lap, so probably not on for pole position here unless we have a mega final sector, and there's a little bit of a wobble out of that corner. Have to be very careful on the power as you go around there. George Russell, a 33.5, that is quite slow, so he's nowhere near pole, but he is quickest so far, but I think he was one of the first drivers to cross the line. Alonso, a 32.4, absolutely puts massive pressure on us. 32.2 for Max Verstappen. We do a 32.8, and that is as good as we can do in quali. We went a tenth quicker than we did in SQ1, but this time it's P6, and it's 0.6 of a second off pole position, which is set by Max Verstappen at a 132.2. Piastri still got some good pace there in a 132.3, and Alonso with a 132.4. We're showing there that, yeah, we did kind of get a little bit lucky in sprint qualifying. It's only P6 on the grid for here in the main race, but let's see what we can do.
Here we are then in one of the fastest growing cities in the United States, the fabulous Austin in the great state of Texas. The circuit itself, 14 miles southeast of the city centre, has been home to the US Grand Prix since 2012, the latest in a long list of iconic tracks to have that honour. It's the Circuit of the Americas then, situated 14 miles outside of the great city of Austin. This is a 3.6 mile lap with 20 corners, 10 to the left and 10 to the right, and top speeds of around 200 miles per hour. Overtaking opportunities are available into turns 1 and 12, especially with that rear wing DRS wide open. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Oscar Piastri lines up on pole position, and Fernando Alonso completes the front row. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Perez, Leclerc, Shaw, Hamilton, Norris, Russell, Gasly, Tsunoda, Ricardo, Ocon, Magnussen, Albon, Joe, Bottas, Hulkenberg, Sargent, Verstappen and Carlos Sainz will start from the back of the grid. And now it's time to head down to the track.
Alright, so even though Max Verstappen got pole position, he has a grid penalty. That means he starts from P19. Sainz also starts from P20 after his engine failure in the sprint. So we are elevated to P5, and it is an alright start. It is not a good start, though, for our teammate Fernando Alonso off the front row. We're going to be side by side with him as we go into turn 1. Piastri is unchallenged at the front here. We get a little bit hung out for dry on the outside, though, so can't make a move on Alonso. But that has not been a good start for my teammate from P2 down to P4. Perez trying to go for a move on Leclerc in a very unorthodox place there. But we're just going to continue on here. We've got Lando Norris behind, who did not have a good qualifying session compared to his teammate. He's just behind us now with Gasly in the Alpine in P7, so looking good for him at this current point in time in the Alpine. We continue on through the rest of this lap. Leclerc in P2, Perez looking at him right behind. Piastri's already gotten a bit of a gap here at the front with Leclerc and Perez fighting each other. We do not get the best run off that corner, so we're just going to deploy as much ERS as we can to try and stay ahead of Lando Norris as Perez and Leclerc are going side by side into the braking zone. Great battle between those two. Alonso right there to pick up the pieces if need be. We've managed to fend off Lando Norris for this current point in time, but we will continue on once again, just carrying on through these corners. Very fun track, this one. I do quite like the Circuit of the Americas. It is a fun track to drive around, and yeah, some pretty decent racing usually as well. And we did see a decent amount of good racing in the sprint, so hopefully similar sort of things to happen here in the main Grand Prix as we round the final corner. Oscar Piastri with, I reckon, over a second gap easily already, so he's had a great start to this race. Hamilton got overtaken by Gasly at the start. He's not had the greatest starts here in the USA, and he manages to get past Pierre into that braking zone on lap number 3 and back up into P7. We now have Perez, the car behind us, because Alonso managed to get past him at some point, and Perez is really falling back a little bit here. We make him go defensive into this next corner. We're going to try and go round the outside. He's going to give us room. We're left a little bit out wide, though, and unfortunately can't quite make a move. As that was going on, Fernando Alonso was trying to get past Leclerc after a poor start for him. He's now getting himself back up to where he started this race, into the braking zone. Leclerc on the inside, Alonso on the outside. He is going to keep his car there, though, and have the inside for the next corner is Fernando. And these guys are going to battle it out for a few more corners here. Great racing between these two. Who will come out on top in this battle? Looks like it might be Alonso with a better run around the outside, and it is Fernando Alonso back up into P2 for this race. We still have Perez ahead of us. The game is telling us to overtake him. Norris is right behind us now as well, so we want to try and make a move as quickly as we can here. Once again, we make him go defensive, and this time it's a late break to the outside. Bit of a lock-up, I think, for Alonso up ahead. We're side by side now with Perez through this next section. Tight little section here. Great side-by-side action. We're trying to get the power down, but he's still there on the inside. We're still going to try and hang it, though, around the outside and do what our teammate did on Leclerc a couple of laps ago, and that is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to get past Sergio Perez and up now into P4, so we're still very much in this race. Lando Norris as well is showing some very good pace, and Perez is falling down the order as Lando Norris makes a pretty easy movie on Checo into the braking zone. Up to P5 for Lando. You can see the gap that Oscar Piastri has at the front now. It is quite a large gap, only 11 laps in. Now, Leclerc, the next car up ahead of us, he's harvesting his ERS, so we're going to go for a move around the outside. Alonso having to go a bit defensive as well there, and we're now going to be side by side with Leclerc, just the same as we were with Sergio Perez, although this time we're going to get the move done a little bit earlier and get up into third place, and we're now right behind our teammate. It is an Aston Martin 2-3. and maybe we're going to try and use each other to try and catch up to Piastri here, who is 3.7 seconds, 3.8 seconds up the road from myself, just over 3 seconds up the road from Alonso. You can see the gap right there. A lot of cars behind us though, back to Lewis Hamilton, but we're going to sense a move up the inside of our teammate, go a little bit deep, but manage to get the move, and we're now up into second place ahead of our teammate. But a couple of laps later, we're going to come into the pits for our one and only pit stop onto the hard compound tyres to finish this race, get the Aston Martin pit crew going there. Good pit stop from the team. We're now back out onto track. Piastri didn't come in, Alonso didn't come in, Perez didn't come in. Those are our main kind of, our main rivals, I guess, in this race at the moment, who did not come into pit. We're going to come out just behind Carlos Sainz, but he hasn't pitted yet because he started right from the back of the grid, remember. And on this same lap that we came out of the pits, we're going to sense a move on Sainz. Hopefully he's not going to hold us up too much here, although he might be trying to do something for his teammate here. He's not obliged to get out of our way. We're not lapping him, and he makes it a little bit difficult for us as he tries to hang on out of that corner, but we do manage to get ahead of Sainz, which unfortunately for him does not help out his teammate, who is now right behind him. Verstappen has unfortunately not been making many moves here. After the pit stops, he's still only P18. He's just now managing to get past Zhou Guanyu for P17, but yeah, he's made no moves at all in this race. He's behind Sainz, and yeah, for Verstappen, for the championship leader, it's looking like a completely pointless weekend for him. No points in the sprint, and at the moment, looking like no points in the Grand Prix either, so he's got a pretty big margin in the championship, but yeah, not looking too great for Verstappen so far. We are still currently sitting in second place. Leclerc behind us, trying to catch Piastri. We have actually been catching him a little bit these last couple of laps, down to 2.2 seconds on the times now. We can see him just ahead of us, and we are really hustling through this section. But, oh no, that's a red engine. We look behind us, there's smoke. There's smoke coming out of the engine. That is going to be a mechanical failure and a retirement for us here in the USA, running P2, chasing down the leader, and we have a mechanical failure once again. It's our second mechanical failure of the season. It's going to be our third DNF of the season after the crash in Imola as well, and we are out of this race after looking at definitely a podium, potentially a race win here, and we are out of the United States Grand Prix. What a disappointment.
Take a bow. What a performance. What a win.
Every single lap of the race, it was a light to flag victory, and that is total dominance.
Our drivers are making their way out for the podium celebrations, and it's going to be McLaren picking up the winner's trophy. Congratulations to the entire team for that fantastic performance.
What a performance for Oscar Piastri and McLaren. It's a 1-3 for the team. Alonso manages to get second place there, so we didn't manage second, but thankfully our teammate did, bringing home some good points. But Piastri, he won his first race in Belgium only 2 rounds ago, and he now wins his second race of the season, and he's a bit further back from that leading pack, and he's not going to have a charge at the championship here. It's too late on, but I think that's now 2 wins each, or 2 feature race wins each for the McLaren pair. So Piastri showing some good stuff here. Like I said, Alonso, great points haul for him. Unfortunately for us, it's only 7 points all weekend, which is very unfortunate. But it is what it is. You have these moments. Hopefully that's the last failure of the season, because we only have 3 races to go now. Verstappen managed to get a point somehow in those last few laps, last 10 laps or so. He did manage to get to P10, so what a charge for him. Sainz, though, probably the driver of the day, from P20 to P8. What a result for him, getting 4 points for Ferrari. And unfortunately, this really shoves us down in the championship. We go from P2 in the Drivers' Championship to P5. We're now 5 points behind Alonso, 8 points behind Lando Norris in second place, just a point behind Hamilton. So it is still very close for second place. It is still a fight for second place between Norris, Alonso, Hamilton, myself, maybe Piastri can make a late charge as well. Verstappen, though, 77 points ahead of Lando Norris, though, so I think he's pretty much got this championship in the bag, even after a very poor weekend. The Constructors' Championship, though, is still very much up for grabs. Only 34 points between Red Bull and Aston Martin, and it's very close all the way back to Mercedes. Ferrari a little bit further back, though. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.